but who really cares if it's possible? The question is, does it score political points and make a good fundraising pitch? Joining me now, David Pakman, syndicated host of the David Pakman Show. He comes to us from Springfield, Massachusetts. Welcome back inside the War Room, David.
Thank you.
David, on the IRS investigation, is this a winning issue for Republicans?
I don't really think it is. I mean, if you look at kind of the context in Citizens United, the number of these 501c4 registrations has gone up significantly, and it's overwhelmingly right-wing groups. So assuming that left and right-wing groups misuse that status equally, you would expect that there would be more right-wing groups who lose that status. Now, taking into consideration also the types of groups that we've seen kind of become more and more popular since Citizens United, it's kind of obvious that this would be the result. Now, that being said, having Tea Party in the definition for the groups you're looking at, probably not a good idea. But we have to remember the context, and it's really just a numbers game, Michael.
Yeah. Now, what action could they take, David? Could the Tea Party actually go turn around and sue the IRS about this?
Individually, no, because if they did not deserve to have the 501c4 status, then there would be really no case that they have. I mean, did they come across the fact that they had that status incorrectly through a way that was somehow prejudiced? I just don't think that that's really anything to overturn. I mean, ultimately, if they lost the 501c4 status, and any group that is, quote, mostly political is not entitled to that status, they simply don't deserve it.
You know, Harry Truman actually made it difficult to get rid of IRS employees, to have them fired so that they wouldn't become politicized. Does the IRS now need better rules for how to determine whether a group is political?
Well, I think there's no question that the number of organizations, the 501c4s is one problem, the political groups, but also the churches that are definitely advocating both candidates and issues, neither of which they should be doing to maintain nonprofit religious educational organization status. There's widespread abuse of that. So we need better regulations. There probably need to be, and this is one of those cases where you probably need more active regulation, but there's no question that some kind of nonpartisan bullet points or checklist needs to be established.
Yeah, David, you make a great point. I mean, when you think about it, you think about all these churches that have for so long been advocating for one or another issue, whether it's against gay marriage, in favor of public prayer, or the, whatever it is. It's really difficult to regulate these groups, and yet, these groups apply for this 503c4, status. Who is out there regulating? Is it just somebody who's taking a form in, looking at it, and deciding, yes, we're going to actually audit, or we're going to look into this further? Do you know how that works, David?
Yeah, in part it's that. It depends on the state. Different states have different rules about what kind of advisory board do you need, and different states, along with different fees, kind of administer that differently. But ultimately, it is groups, it is individuals similar to the ones we saw at this particular IRS office. So there may not be kind of the total, we may not have an equal situation across the country. And as this points out, and as you kind of got to, the idea that even the top people at the IRS know exactly how it's been done isn't true. And therefore, jumping to President Obama was involved is a pretty long stretch for which we have no evidence at all.
Yeah, that's really the absurdity here. So this is a story that probably won't go away anytime soon, to one that we hope will. Benghazi, House Speaker John Boehner, David, is obsessed with this issue, according to Politico anyway, and he essentially sets the agenda for Republicans. So is this pretty much what we'll see for the president's second term?
It's possible, but at a certain point, you have to assume that people are going to get tired of this. I mean, if there is an actual impeachment attempt, I can't imagine it's going to be good or positive for Republicans, because most people, again, if you look at polls, there are groups that, and there's a portion of people who still think we don't know something there. But as you pointed out in the open, we've had hours of testimony from so many people, and even though a lot of people are pretending like we just don't know anything, it's kind of like people pretending we don't know anything about Barack Obama after numerous, the autobiography, the biographies, uncovering everything, and kind of just that famous phrase, we just need to know more. What more do we really need to know?
Right, and that's what Bob Corker, the senator from Tennessee, the Republican, said. We already know everything. There's nothing else we can know. He's a Republican senator. When you talk about the politics of this, it seems so ill-timed, like you said. It seems so early if they want this to be about politics. The Benghazi fatigue should set in. Do you see this hurting Hillary Clinton?
Well, that's obviously been the goal, right? Because once we kind of figured out that President Obama was not personally altering talking points and whatever other conspiracy theories existed, Hillary Clinton seems to be kind of the focus of this and a potential 26 run and how that could be affected. I think that the fatigue you just talked about might actually play against Republicans talking about Hillary, because if she does decide to run, at that point, if this is still a huge story, if it becomes a real story, she just won't run. And if it's not a real story, people will be just tired of it. So I think it's not a win-win by any means. It's probably a lose-lose at this point.
Yeah, that's a spectacularly good piece of analysis, because there's no way, unless this is legitimate, that it's going to hurt the Democrats, because it won't have her run. But there is one part of that. If it does scare her away from running, I sort of feel like then the Republicans feel like they have a chance of winning in 2016 because there are beatable Democrats. And I think a lot of people with political know-how look at Hillary Clinton as not really beatable by any of the Republicans that are in the field now. So let's go to the actual charges here. Is there any merit to the Republicans' charge that the president downplayed or even covered up the Benghazi stuff? Because it happened right before the election.
The characterization is very, very subjective, right? To say that something was downplayed versus it was written that way for any number of reasons could be, it's really up for interpretation. We could also interpret a number of different ways. Well, what exactly did George W. Bush do in terms of downplaying intelligence that would have not helped the cause for going into Iraq? Was it a lie? Was it downplaying? Did it just so happen the way information was obtained led to that kind of change or series of talking points? It's so subjective. What we know is there's really no evidence of deliberate misleading at this point, which is very different from what happened with Iraq.
Yeah, absolutely. David Pakman is the host, ironically, of the David Pakman Show. Really appreciate the time, David, as always. We turn now to a